Hello and welcome to Instant Insights. At GlobalData Strategic Intelligence, we track over 100 tech, industry, ESG and macro themes impacting all major sectors. My name is Sturdee and today I'm joined by some of my GlobalData colleagues. David Bicknell, Principal Analyst in GlobalData's Strategic Intelligence team. David Leggett, Editor of Just Auto, a B2B GlobalData media website. Ben Carey-Evans, Senior Insurance Analyst. They have kindly agreed to come on the podcast today to talk about the recent spike in cyber attacks targeting large corporations, like JLR, M&S, Co-op, and just this week, Asahi. David, my first question is to you. Can you tell us about why companies are increasingly becoming targets of cyber attacks? Who is committing these cyber attacks and why?
Yes, it seems the businesses affected by these attacks are growing in the size of the company impacted, their status and their brand recognition. In April, there was a series of cyber attacks on retailers, Harrods, the Co-op and Marks and Spencer in the UK. And now more recently, we've had attacks on Jaguar Land Rover and in Japan on the brewing group Asahi. And in between, we've had attacks on airports. There's been an argument put forward that most of this cybercrime has been carried out by Russian-speaking criminals based in Russia or other parts of the former Soviet Union. But in the last couple of years, some of the attacks are thought to have been carried out by English-speaking, mostly teenage hackers that have been leasing or renting ransomware from those Russian-speaking cyber criminals, and then using that ransomware to disrupt and extort from the businesses they've gained access to. It seems these English-speaking criminals have tended to focus on quite high-profile victims. That may be because they're not just financially motivated, but they also want to demonstrate their skill and get kudos within what you might call the hacking ecosystem. That takes us back in some way to the old goal of wanting to be recognized for your hacking prowess. The group that targeted the retailers, including Marks and Spencer, was thought to be one called Scattered Spider. The breach of Marks and Spencer's IT systems was via a third-party contractor, and eventually it halted all online shopping at the retailer, which accounts for a third of its business. Fortunately for Marks and Spencer, it was protected by its cyber insurance policy. Others haven't been so lucky, but I'm sure we'll get onto cyber insurance later.
Thank you, David. The perception many people have of cyber attacks is that the cyber hackers get access and steal data. What kind of data do they target and why?
So hackers used to target companies through ransomware and demand that a ransom be paid. And now the ransomware attack is accompanied by data extortion, if you like, as a lever for payment, especially when that data is customer data. At Harrods, the Co-op and Marks and Spencer, customer data was stolen. In Marks and Spencer's case, the customer data potentially included telephone numbers, home addresses, and dates of birth, though not usable payment or card details. It was a similar story at the Co-op. Its chief executive confirmed that all 6.5 million of its members had their data stolen in a cyber attack on the retailer in April. The Co-op said there was no financial data or transaction data, but there were names, addresses, and contact information that was lost. In September 2025, Harrods was struck by a serious cyber incident after more than 400,000 customer records were stolen in a third-party data breach at an undisclosed supplier. Harrods said the incident was unrelated to an attempted scattered spider attack on its systems earlier in the year. The reality is that retail is a prime target for attacks such as data mining and ransomware due to the volume of customer data processed and the high cost of operational downtime. It's been suggested by cybersecurity specialists that attacks are getting far more advanced and highly personalized because of AI, where the primary attack is to get money from the retailer and use that to free up access back to the information. In a secondary attack, all that information that has been gathered can then be sold to other people who might do a secondary activity with it. In other words, the AI is making these secondary attacks such that people are more likely to click on highly personalized bait, if you like. There was a great summary of this in GlobalData's Retail Insight Network. The bait could be phrased, I see that you bought this the last time that you visited our store. We hope that was great for you. Here are some personalized offers for you based on what you like to shop for. The subtext to that is, I've got access to you as a loyalty scheme customer, and I probably know quite a bit about you and what you shop for.
Thank you. In the case of Jaguar Land Rover, the cyber attack that occurred on August 31st completely halted the OEM's production lines. David, why have LJR operations stopped in the aftermath of the cyber attack, and why have they been paused for as long as they have?
I think the real driver here is the length and sheer complexity of huge multi-tiered global automotive supply chains. And underlying those supply chains, those big elongated supply chains, is a complex web of logistics with parts being moved around potentially very long distances across borders back and forth. The supply chain itself is only as strong as its weakest point. But as soon as manufacturing operations stop at the top, with the OEMs such as JLR and vehicle manufacturing operations, then the whole chain seizes up because after some stock building, there really is nowhere for the component parts output to go. Another complicating factor is that different operational functions are often interconnected. So, for example, that orders for parts in the aftermarket, say, feed seamlessly through to manufacturing operations and logistics. So there's a lot to sort out if anything goes wrong. There really are a lot of moving parts. And restarting that complex supply chain after it has stopped takes time because of the need for coordination of those multiple supplier tiers and ensuring full data protection and cybersecurity measures are in place at all points along that long supply chain. So unfortunately, it's a rather complex machine that doesn't come, as many would like it to come, with a great big single green reset button.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. After the cyber attack, the UK government agreed to a commercial bank loan of £1.5 billion to JLR. In its decision, the government states that the loan is aimed at supporting JLR's most impacted suppliers. David, could you run us through the cascading effects of a cyber attack on a large corporation's supply chain?
Yes, a bit of background and context here. A typical vehicle contains up to say 20,000 parts, component parts, which are arranged into major vehicle systems and subsystems such as powertrain, interiors, chassis, suspension, steering, and so on. There are tier one suppliers and system integrators who supply directly to the vehicle makers. These are big firms such as Bosch and Valeo. But then underneath, there is a pyramid of smaller tier two, tier three, tier four suppliers who supply constituent parts for vehicle systems and subsystems. And underlying all of that is a very complex web of transport logistics and warehousing, with parts being moved around through multiple stages of manufacturing processes, often across borders. So JLR effectively sits at the top of a really rather massive manufacturing ecosystem. That complexity of part supply, which entails both hardware and software elements, means that supply chains can be fragile and they come with surface points and back doors that can potentially be vulnerable to cyber attack. When manufacturing operations stop at the top with the OEMs such as JLR and its vehicle manufacturing activity, then the whole supply chain underneath seizes up because there is simply nowhere for the component parts output to go, and the factories therefore grind to a halt.
Thank you. Are there lessons and long-term implications for companies, do you think?
Yes, I think there are a number of things to think about here. I think an event like this and the huge economic implications when a major company is forced to halt its operations, this event acts as something of a wake-up call in terms of risk mitigation for the future and the inherent dangers of cyber attacks, the things that David was talking about. So on the positive side, I think JLR has been on a very steep learning curve, understanding where cyber attack vulnerabilities lie and what kinds of measures can be taken to improve protection and reduce future risks. So very much a learning process has been taking place here. And high-profile cases like this mean that many companies will be alerted to taking cyber attack risks themselves much more seriously and taking steps to improve the robustness of their supply chains. And in addition, they will also be seeking to spread best practice down through their supply chains to other companies. It's a very interdependent situation with these elongated supply chains. There may also, I think, be a case for examining the interconnected systems which are part of the lean manufacturing principles that have worked so well in the auto industry over decades to take out waste and boost efficiency, these interconnected systems where sales talks to production and so on, to see if they can be made more robust in cyber attack terms. So there really is a lot to think about in terms of the long term implications of a cyber attack like this.
It seems so, yeah. Thank you. A big factor of the JLR case study is that the company did not have any cyber insurance. So, Ben, is cyber insurance an indispensable expense for businesses in today's digital environment? And what do you think the consequences are of not having it?
Yeah, so yeah, I think it definitely is. I think it's very surprising actually for a company the size of Land Rover to actually not have any cyber insurance. As you were just discussing with David, it was shut down for 6 weeks, which it estimates to cost 13 million pounds. But that's just the initial shutdown period. You'll also have potential fines that come into play with being a victim of cyber attack. And then of course you'll have the huge sort of reputational damage that comes off the back of that as well. Being named in a national news story, individual data being leaked. It's going to potentially put consumers off. Maybe not hugely in the motor industry, but there are other industries, like thinking of social media and other examples in the past where that could be really, really damaging in terms of reputation and consumers' likelihood to use your services again. So yeah, it's very important to have cyber insurance. You have sort of a few different types of cyber insurance. You have the sort of basic, I guess, more traditional policies where it just sort of underwrites risk and then pays out claims when they come. So that obviously could be useful with the initial shutdown period and loss of business in that period. But I think what's probably moving towards now, especially for bigger companies, and I think it's probably surprising that Land Rover didn't have this in the first place, but a more preventative cyber cover. So this would include staff training, 24/7 monitoring of systems, just to the extent that hopefully you could spot any potential hacks early and mitigate them, or at least if you spot them really early, mitigate the damage somewhat. And then it becomes more of a partnership rather than a normal insurance policy. You have both parties extremely invested in preventing an attack, and it's very, very beneficial for both parties. So that's sort of where we're going and working potentially with leading insurers in the field, but you also do see a lot of cyber specialists here as well who are potentially threats to insurers. But yeah, I think going back to the original point, how many people have cyber insurance or why don't they have cyber insurance? I think I'd say it's surprising. We have our SME survey where we have penetration rates of cyber insurance for SMEs. And throughout smaller companies, it is quite sparse. You have sort of 13% of sole traders, so individuals running businesses, a quarter of micro businesses, 40% of small businesses, but then 63% of medium-sized businesses, so 100 to 250 employees in that category, have cyber insurance. So nearly two-thirds. Land Rover obviously will be significantly bigger than that. It'd be a large business which would have extremely high rates of penetration. So it does seem a massive oversight from Land Rover's perspective to not have had a policy at all. And just a couple of other points from that survey. We asked, what was the trigger of those SMEs that do have a cyber insurance policy? We asked, what was the leading trigger for your company buying a policy? And 26.2% of those SMEs who had cyber said that media reports about other businesses being victim of a cyber attack was one of the key reasons they got a policy. So that you can see sort of a quarter of businesses have been driven to buy cyber insurance by seeing other companies, similar companies, competitors being victim of an attack and realizing that actually it can happen to them. So yeah, these stories that we've discussed, especially Land Rovers, but the other ones as well, probably going to drive an increase in cyber insurance. And yeah, as we go forward, especially with the larger companies, I imagine there'll be more of a drive for preventative cyber cover. Yeah, because that can obviously help with reputational damage, help preventing that. Whereas traditional policies, they might pay off the initial damage, but the reputational damage is much longer lasting.
Thank you very much. That's definitely a lot to think about. I think that's sadly all we have time for today. But thank you for those instant insights. Thanks for listening. And from us in Strategic Intelligence, see you next time.